9 o'clock. All right, we are recording, folks. So, we set. Welcome to the 7th Paparelli Zoom chat for entrepreneurs. Thanks for coming to share and to serve each other. Can everybody hear me okay? We good? Good.
Yep.
Today is day 51 of the United States of America being shut down. We got 30 million people unemployed, but the economy is restarting. We're certainly seeing the optimism from President Trump, and I hope everything that he believes comes true. Mike, I had an experience. I ride motorcycles. This has been the absolute best motorcycle riding I've had in my entire life because there's no one on the roads. About a week ago, I went through Dahlonega, and through the downtown Dahlonega, there was not a car in the square. It was empty. And on May 1st, which was the first opening, which was last Friday, I went through there again, and now there was not one space available. It was everybody in Dahlonega just said, I can go out, I'm out. And I think it speaks a little bit that people do want out. And they want their life back. They're sort of saying enough already. But there's also, I noticed that there's an awareness now that we didn't have before in our behavior and how we're acting with each other. So to say, oh, we're all going to come back and it's all going to jump up again, I don't know that it's fair because we're being careful. We're wearing masks and we're doing the things of social distancing while we're together. And that's going to be a little bit about today. But the purpose of these Paparelli Zoom chats for entrepreneurs is there an interactive forum for entrepreneurs to discuss their issues and opportunities and to share their views and decisions. So we're in this together here. Being a leader is a lonely job. So we use this forum to listen, learn, and share. So let's help each other because I believe together we're stronger. I've put a resources page together on the paparelli.com site. I've added something new to it just recently, which is going to be ATV's insider sort of plan for what they're doing for their tenants and their partners. So I think that you might find that interesting. Karen put that together, and Karen's going to be speaking also today. I've listed the house rules in our chat, so take a look at that. Today we're going to be talking about getting back to work. We've weathered the isolation, and we need to make some decisions now. How do we get back to the right normal? And I call it a right normal because it really depends on your business, your employees, and the best way to serve your customers. It's going to be different for everybody. There'll be some commonality, but there'll be differences. And I believe that there are 3 planning considerations in getting to this right normal. The first is safety for the employees and customers, productivity, or in talking to Karen, I find out the word she used was efficiency of the business going forward. And then the last is legal liability surrounding the decisions that we make. We'll be discussing how to plan for today. We'll be discussing a plan for the safety for employees and customers. We'll also talk about planning for the productivity of the business. I'm really going to go real light on the legal liability issue, because it needs to be addressed by you. The Senate is trying to address this in the latest bill they're debating so that there wouldn't be legal liability, but you really need to seek advice from your attorney. That said, it's important planning consideration. The liability is there and it's real for all of us as small business people. The entrepreneur's thought of the day before we jump in, right from the Bible, I always put it out there, is those who are wise will find a time and a way to do what is right, for there is a time and a way for everything, even when a person is in trouble. And that's from Ecclesiastes 8:5. And here's the secular version. I've got my friend Rusty Gordon on the line here. Rusty's still there. Rusty he has a signature in his email that I really always loved, and it says, do the right thing and do it now. And this is where we are. I've invited 2 leaders to kick off our discussion. They are both do the right thing and do it now people. First is Karen, Karen Houghton, who is the VP of Atlanta Tech Village, and John DeMarco, who's somebody we don't hear from very often. He's CEO of Cedar CX Technologies. I'll introduce these two in more detail in a second. First to Karen. Karen is a leader I've admired from the moment that I met her. She's a great communicator and she's got a servant's heart. And she has set the culture really for Atlanta Tech Village. And it's because of Karen that I'm associated with the village. I wanted to work for Karen in any way I could. She co-leads the village and has done it from really the village's inception. Karen, thanks for agreeing to get our discussion started. I was wondering maybe if you can kick us off and tell us the unique challenges you have as a shared work environment in getting to the right normal for the village.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see a lot of familiar faces and some new ones. As y'all know, Atlanta Tech Village is America's 4th largest tech hub, which means we have about 300 companies, probably a little less these days. And we are tasked with creating an environment where they all feel safe coming back to work in their own time when it is right for them. So we have done a lot of research and a lot of investment and a lot of creative thinking in how we can essentially turn a 103,000 square foot building into a place where people feel safe and where they can be productive. So it's been quite a journey. We, y'all may know, but we have been open the whole time. So we have been maintained being open 24/7 because many of our companies do have essential services. So,
hey, Karen.
Yes.
I'm gonna do a mute all, and then I'll ask you to unmute and then continue, okay?
Okay.
I forgot to do that. I can hear people coming into the background here. So go ahead, unmute and go again.
I was just saying we have maintained open doors the whole time for essential services. So if you were processing payroll, then you were considered an essential service. But we were gratefully very underutilized during the shelter in place time, although we probably averaged 20 or so people a day out of our 1,200. But once the shelter in place was ending, we knew that we could potentially be utilized more often. And so we have essentially worked to set the tone for all the other entrepreneurs, because I've had many say, hey, Karen, whatever y'all do is what we are going to do. And so they're very reliant on us to kind of set that tone.
Wow.
So really,
what kind of feedback were you getting before your planning cycle, during the shutdown, if you will? What kind of feedback were you getting from your tenants, the entrepreneurs that were there? What were they requesting? Were they like, open the doors, I want back in, or, you know, just I'll do whatever you say? I'm not sure.
Well, when you have 1,200 people, you get a little bit of everybody, for sure. But I think, generally speaking, we have been on the front edge of every single kind of next thing in this global pandemic. So we actually canceled public events before, I think, anybody else. We closed to the public before anybody else. And so for us, it was just being educated and reading and being cautious and making sure that we put people first. And so I think because they knew our intention and our heart in serving our community, it was very much a reflection of, hey, they're trying to do what's best. And they were very thankful every time we made those choices.
Yeah, you're in a kind of a unique situation in that when we be talking to John later, you know, he's got some employees that are saying, look, I really like this working from home. This is pretty cool stuff, right? Yet you have people that these are small, very small businesses, some of them just one-man, two-man businesses kind of thing. You know, they're sitting there saying, hey, I'm paying rent.
Yeah.
Right? I'm paying rent. It's coming in my credit card every month. So are they saying I want to be back in my office?
I definitely think it's changing work. Startups don't, I mean, you guys know you are all sitting at home. So I'm at the office and there's not a lot of people there. So there's an element of, you don't have to be together to do work. But at the same time, if you devalue the togetherness, I think Zooms are great. All of these things are great, but there is something about being in a room with somebody and bouncing ideas off them and seeing their expressions and the energy is something that I think human connection is really important too. So for us, we just are trying to find that balance, and when they choose the right time is to come back, that we can create a place where they can have that connectivity, but in the safest way possible.
But there are changes that are
Some people
taking
are like,
place,
hey, I
right?
can work from home.
But yeah, but if I come to the work from home sort of, then all of a sudden I start canceling my commitment to you. So have you had a big hit with regard to revenues?
Yeah, we are
Anticipating?
we're predicting for this year that we'll have about a 50% reduction in revenue. So we definitely acted very quickly. We laid off half of our team, which was quite difficult over Zoom calls. I know there's mostly men here, but yes, I had tears in my eyes. Those were very difficult conversations. When you're a small business, the people you work with are often the people you do life with. But we,
And you guys did that too. What a beautiful team you had. I knew that was heartbreaking to break that team up for you.
it was, but for us, you know, as our events director, we're not planning on doing events for at least another 12 months. So we're doing virtual events. Love what you're doing here, Charlie, but we're doing virtual workshops, virtual events, and we were doing those before most people were doing those. Now I feel like everyone's doing them.
How do you envision the sort of ATV 2.0 here, if you will, because I just thought about that. I mean, it really isn't. It's like, well, we can do the safety stuff and do all that kind of stuff, but you really have to have a vision for what it's going to look like, just like David Cumming had a vision when he bought the building. Right? Well, that's changed now, right? Because of what we've just been through. So what's the vision really for ATV as it goes forward?
It is. The vision is that we will continue to be a place where we can support entrepreneurs who are on their quest to change the world through technology. And that can look a lot of different ways. I mean, we're still actively providing advisors and mentors. We are actively providing partner credits. We're working with people even for like Q3 who are like, hey, we want to host an event, but a virtual event. We're like, great, we can live stream it. You can access our event center. Here's our restrictions. So I think the community, like I did a female founder coffee hour, and we did it through Icebreaker, which is really cool software. We're doing weekly happy hours for entrepreneurs. So there's still a lot of connectivity happening. And so we still have a lot of people who are like, no, we're going to come back to our office. We're just not ready yet.
Okay.
And we've worked, you know, anyone who's asked for financial assistance.
So if I go out, let me say if we go out to say to January, you know, all the way out to January, do you see that ATV is going to look like ATV did in say January of 2020?
No.
It will look different.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a global pandemic, right? So none of us can predict the future, but I think if we are educating ourselves and reading and kind of looking at that, while we're certainly hopeful and optimistic, we think it will potentially still look different. Yes.
Okay.
And we're okay with that. It's an opportunity to, you know, innovate and embrace those new opportunities. And we're hopeful that maybe it can help us become even better.
You've always done that too. And my last question to you really is so you put this plan in place and you have this sort of vision for where it's going. You know, what are your concerns about your plan, and how are you going to monitor it to say, it's not what we thought? You know, I know you'll pivot quickly. Okay. But you know, like you said, you're impacting 1,200 people. It's you got a lot of responsibility. So what are your concerns?
Well, we've invested about $200,000 into our building in the last month to make it as pandemic friendly as possible. So it's been a huge investment, and we're innovating. And because there is no playbook and no one's telling us what to do, it's something that we are aware that we may look back and say, all right, we could have done that differently or better, but we want to be the people who are setting the tone. We have many other people reaching out to us already saying, what did you do? Where did you get this? How did you do this?
But is there one concern that overrides? It's sort of like that one that you sort of, when you go into bed at night, it's sort of like on your mind.
I think my intent and hope is that for our brand, right? So we have the opportunity to do these tasks, but you also have this brand awareness. And for our brand, we want to always make sure that people leave feeling cared for and supported by Atlanta Tech Village. Okay. So that is something that you can see, like we can say, here's policies and you have to wear a mask, which we do, but like we have masks and it's like, we're in this together. Or if you read the internal email that Charlie asked if he could post to you guys, we intentionally use casual, warm language that speaks to our customer the best we can. So people remember how you feel at the end, right? And so as long as we can serve these people and make sure that we are creating an environment and communication where they feel safe and feel supported, then that would be what
I
keeps
think
us
that's,
up.
I love that. I love that. So what you're saying is my biggest concern is I don't want to, in the midst of this crisis or midst of this change, this behavioral change that's going to take place or in this new model, I don't want to lose who we are.
Correct. And
That's really cool. I like
it's a balance of, obviously we have to be a viable business. So
Yeah, right.
we're definitely, that would be the priority of like, how are we getting revenue? How are we being creative and all these things? But ultimately we get revenue by serving our customer first. So if our customers, which are our members, are fans and feel cared for and feel supported, then they will come back, and that's where our revenue will come.
Perfect. Karen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I think this has been really helpful. And again, she's been kind enough to let us post her email to partners and to her tenants. Okay. The
We'll
entrepreneur.
do an official blog. I'm about to finish it.
Okay.
That'll be out Thursday, but y'all are getting the insider look.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. And John, I'm going to call you out here. John's a good friend. I've known John for years. He's a brother to a fellow that I was partners with named Tom DeMarco. And this is John DeMarco, his older brother. John is, he's first generation Georgia Tech grad, and his son, Jack, is entering his 4th year at Georgia Tech. And just to let you know, Jack is looking for an internship since his last internship was pulled. So write John in the chat here if you have something available for Jack, or you think you might have something available. Let's help each other here. That's what it's about. And as John said, you know, his budget has changed considerably, that he now has a $3,000 shortfall because Jack lost his internship. But John is the CEO of Cedar CX Technologies. Cedar's been around for a while. They're angel backed. They're not venture backed. And they're a profitable company. They manage all the communications for financial institutions, like all of the statements you might get from like a Schwab or a Goldman or something. So he deals with them. He manages all their communications. They have well over 100 employees, and they're doing well over 20 million in sales. John, thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlie.
Okay.
Pleasure.
So,
thanks for the plug for Jack.
Yeah, I knew that you'd appreciate that. Yeah. Tell your wife I said that, okay?
I will, I believe me.
All right. So somebody write, I hope somebody does find him something just today. But we talked a little bit, and you said you're hearing from your employees. What are you hearing from your employees as you're sort of considering this new normal that you're trying to get back to?
Please don't make us come back to the office.
What's their rationale? What are they saying?
Well, I think that, you know, it's hard to get, you know, 116 rank and file, you know, direct inputs remotely. I missed my, I used to call it my hallway early warning system, right? So I don't have that anymore. So I have to, you know, be a little bit more direct in my contact with the folks. But it's the senior management guys that are really the most militant about, you know, wanting to change to a new normal immediately here. And I think that, you know, while I feel like personally, I understand where they're coming from, because there's no traffic fatigue when you're spending an hour each way, you know, in the morning and the afternoon. And, you know, that really kind of sucks a lot of life out of you, and it gives it back to you to give back to the business and to your life. I can see it. Some of my guys have a much worse commute than that. So, I get it.
Put that together. That's 10 hours a week sitting in a car, right?
That's right.
Stressfully sitting in a car. It's a tough
right,
time.
Right. It's not.
Now I've had 6 to 8 weeks where I'm not stressed. Right. I get up, I have my coffee, and I go to my computer. But go ahead.
My commute is 8 minutes or is 8 seconds or something. Right. So it's interesting to see the dynamic. Now we've got, you know, information technology. We've been fortunate that we were able to transition pretty smoothly. The bulk of our staff work from home 2 days a week. Operations, of course, runs 24/7, 365. So they're used to working from home nice weekends, things like
Yeah, but you got this situation, John. So you get the employees sort of now sitting there and going, not so much, right? This is working out pretty well for me and all that.
Right.
What concerns does that bring up on your side? While you're
I'm
trying
concerned
to
about
plan, what is my business going to look like? I mean, how do
right.
we come together,
Yeah, I think, if you look at what the Georgia guidelines for return to occupancy in office space, you look at what the office space people are telling us on the safety side, I'm like, do I really got to turn the place into an ICU to get back into the office? I mean, that's really kind of what it looks like in a way. And so you think about, is the benefit of being in the office outweigh the drag effect of all these COVID, countermeasures from a safety standpoint. So, for the short term, I think there's still a lot of fear out there. People are still, reading the more pessimistic stuff out there. And so there's still, we've got a lot of folks that might need some special accommodation. So I think there's still a good fear factor, and they don't see there's not a long-term hit. I'm sorry, there's not a short-term hit to our productivity right now. We're doing fine. It's the long-term cultural erosion that I'm more concerned about.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Because we got a lot of people that work together.
So everybody
for a long
starts
time.
feeling, so what happens is you're worried that everybody starts, instead of feeling a part of Cedar CX, they feel like they're just sort of a contractor for you.
Correct. Right. And so in the old days, we had a lot of innovation pressure. I can't even imagine what Karen's folks are going through in that situation because, personal interactions and the things we talked about earlier, the personal dynamic of learning together and innovating is really, enhanced when you're in the same room, in front of the same whiteboard. We don't have as much pressure for that, but any business our size has got to continue to innovate. And so I feel like we're eating our social capital. I feel like we've developed a real kind of reserve of teamwork, cultural capital over the last 20 years, and we're slowly going to eat it without that. So we can live with it, remote for another,
You're not going to eat it. You're saying that this new environment will eat it.
Yes.
This health consciousness, if you will, right?
Yeah, or the fear. I think it's not even a consciousness thing, right? It's really it's an abject fear in a lot of people. And so I think that's my concern is longer term is, and I think I mentioned.
Have you gotten to a point now that you are sort of have formulated some type of vision for what it's going to look like for you?
No. We tried to start, and the pushback from the leadership's been pretty surprising to me, how adamant they are that they don't want to be pushed into that scenario right now.
Into what scenario?
The return to office occupancy.
But you're saying, are they pushing back to the point where they don't even want to talk about it as to what it's going to look like?
Pretty close.
I mean, if you don't know what it looks like, right, or have some shared vision, if you will, you can't have a plan, a plan to get there, right?
I agree. Right. So, so that's, and again, I think, it's only been, a month or so here of real, kind of, change in habit. I mean, that's one of the other things I was going to mention is that I kind of looked at this as a really temporary thing, and it's really looming now on my radar as really not a temporary thing. So, so we've got to rethink what the new normal is, and we've got to try to find a balance. But I think we've got to give it more time too. I think we just got to give, more time for some of the hysteria or some of the fear, whether it's real or not. The fear is real, to kind of die down or to develop. If it's going to come back, roaring back, then that changes things. But I agree.
I love that you said that you said you thought of this as temporary and you realize it's not.
Yeah.
So it is something it's not like they're coming back from vacation, right?
Right.
And we're just back to normal. No, this is going to be you're going to have to come to a shared vision. So as you look forward, what's your biggest, go ahead.
When you think about, small company, just running the business is very, we're a mission critical service for these financial institutions. We got to go through a lot of secure certifications, operational pressure. And then you think about improving the business, right? I want to grow the business. I want to improve our profitability. I want to, improve our value to our investors, so we've got initiatives to improve the business on top of running the business. And then all of a sudden this comes in, right? And it's just one more thing stacked on top of everybody. And as long as we don't have a crisis broken, I mean, we're not a restaurant, you know, we haven't had to have those kind of heartbreaking calls Karen mentioned earlier, right? So, you know, we can afford to give it some runway here. And I think, you know, I was surprised. I'm a think ahead guy, like you said. I'm trying to put a, and I'm a big believer in getting buy-in from the team. You know, hear their thoughts and things like that. When their thought was loud and clear to me yesterday, in fact, we had a meeting. It's like, we don't want to think about it right now. So, so that's
cool.
That's kind of the
not only don't want to think about it, they don't want to talk about it, right?
Right. We don't even want to talk about it right now. So,
well, it's really hard to put a plan together and come to a shared vision if you're going to talk about it. So with all that said, then, where you are right now, I asked Karen this question, I'll ask you, what's your biggest concern, for your business here, around this topic? Okay.
It's Ben, it's the current customers freezing up. There's a certain, we've already seen a pretty big hit. CarMax is a big client of ours. We're in the deployment of the entire new core system for their communications. They had to close 200 stores, right? They got crushed. Now our project has been going there. We're very high on their list of trusted vendors. They have not cut back any of the spend with us yet. They're talking about it more and more. The launch already slipped into next year. So we're looking at a couple $1 million hit already to revenue, probably looking at, another 3-4 million in risk. So I'm mostly worried about those decisions. Now we're fortunate. We tend to be in a business that is long-term decision-making. So it's not, but
you've got a very high sticky factor with you. Once you
right. It's very hard to sell, but it's very hard to unsell, right? And so, so it tends to be a long-term decision model, but still, the severity of this event is shaking a lot of people up. So I worry about just people not doing the right thing, putting off doing the right thing to next year, and and us having.
But it is interesting, John. You did tell me you went from forecasting this was going to be the best year in the history of the company.
Yep.
Now it's I saw David Cumming put out something a few weeks ago that just has stuck with me. He says the new growth model is flat.
Yeah.
I thought that was
a
brilliant insight, and I hear it over and over again. If we could just stay flat, man,
right.
We've crushed it this year.
Yeah, well, that's great news. Our banker said the same thing, and I'm like, we're great at flat. We're really good at it. So we can handle that, We can just hang out of that, maybe.
Let's open it up to see if there's anybody else wants to share what they're planning and how they're envisioning their business going forward. Who else do we have? Thanks, John. That was really helpful. And thank you, Karen.
John, Charlie, there is a question for John if you want to.
Yeah. What is it?
John, Ryan asked, is any of your seasoned full-time employees, do they have a different perspective on those who are new to working full-time from home?
I think so. The older folks, some of them have had health issues. So seasoned, more experienced folks tend to be a little older. The new folks tend to be a little bit more social. They tend to, I think, miss that more. And so I think there has been a difference. And, the senior leadership they're not the oldest guys in the company. They're not the youngest, right? So their attitudes, they're much more conservative and protective of their folks. And I think that they're particularly concerned about cross-infection risk, from younger folks to the more seasoned folks, and having a, critical skill person out for an extended period. It's one thing to get the flu for 3-4 days. It's another thing to be out for weeks, right? For some of these folks. So
that makes a lot of sense. But it is interesting. Is my son, Nick Paparelli, is he on this call? He's not. He's works for New Relic as a sales rep. And they're not going to come back. So he's down at Colony Square in the WeWork space, and they're not going to come back until June 1st. And he's like those younger people that you're talking about. He's that social side, he's going like nuts, right? He's not married. He's sitting there. He's got all of the controls on him. and none of the benefits of social interaction, right?
Right.
They know every call that he makes, how long it takes, who he's talking to, how it's all working, through Salesforce and SalesLoft and some of the other stuff that they use to control him. But he does. The younger people it seems, are missing the social interaction. And the older people are scared to death that the younger people are going to infect them. It's a good point. Yeah.
I will
Anybody
say,
else?
like in the Atlanta Ventures portfolio, most of those companies, which are larger, which like you, John, is going to be anywhere between 100 and 500 employees, they're looking at October. So in the Village, we're hearing a lot of
What do you
June
mean
1,
they're looking at October?
like reopening, like Terminus reopening office in October 1.
Really?
Mhm.
Really?
So I think it's evolving, right? So it can change, but I think a lot of our companies in the Village are like May, or it's just too soon for May. There is a lot of fear. So we're hearing a lot of June. But some of the larger companies, to y'all's point, it's like, how much investment do you have to make? Like, they don't want to have to do what the Village had to do. And so I think it'll be potentially
That's
early
interesting you
fall.
say that, because I just talked to Frank Teig down there at ATDC, and he said, I was talking to him, we do Angel Lounge on the third Thursday of the month, and I said, do you want me to try to bring people in? And he goes, no, man. He says, Georgia Tech's got us locked down. He said, because they're all trying to figure out this investment they need to make in the space that you made. Okay, to make it all sort of workable. So he says, we're certainly not going to do anything before June, which, so I just thought everybody was going to turn on like you did. You're just, once again, Karen, you are blazing the trail, sister. All right.
We're trying.
Yeah, you do a good job. All right. But take a look at what I put on the resources page from Karen. It really is well thought out. It's a very good job. But $200,000 investment is something to think about. That caught my attention, certainly. Anybody else? Who else do we have? Nelson, I always like to pick on you. You always talk about your companies and what they're doing. What are they saying? Come on video and talk to me.
You catch me when I'm getting coffee.
All right.
Well, I mean, one interesting perspective, I think that was just mentioned, we had a little internal kind of workshop on the future, right? I think the way Cam put it was good, which is if we think about the future, post 9/11, if you would have gone into an airport and TSA was gone, you'd be like, man, that is so bizarre. So, the question was, in this post-COVID, what would be completely odd if it was or wasn't there, right? And a lot of us were talking about the need to work from home, and some of us had our kids on the line, and my 23-year-old who's in LA had to pipe up after a while and said, some of us that don't have family and chose to live near work, we want to go to work, right? Because A, it is the social piece, but also B, we're trying to learn from you older people. So we're all cooped up in our little houses.
Nelson,
5-minute walk from work.
You're one of us now, Nelson.
I'm sorry?
You're one of us now. You're
Yeah,
one
I know.
of the older people. Okay.
Oh, no, she was referring to me. And
I know
others
at
as
some
old
point you're
people.
going to stop dyeing your hair, okay? And you'll show your true age, but go ahead.
So I think that's interesting. I mean, a lot of our offices, our portfolio companies are work from home, but they're eager to get back to work, particularly the younger ones. We fortunately, I'll have to check in with Cardlytics and see what they're up to. They're no longer a portfolio company, but we don't have a lot of companies that are in a few hundred employee range, right? So a few dozen employees. Some had been dispersed already, from the get-go, meaning different cities. And so no more than, call it 4 or 5 or 6 people per office. So I think they'll be able to get back together in the spaces that they have. But, one thing we're going to be really considering is sort of how much space do we need, right? Do you need to have space for everybody to have 200, 100 square foot each, or even 50 square feet each, if not everybody's coming in all the time? So, and then I think the other consideration that we'll have is from a sales perspective, I think a lot of people are going to be scrutinizing the travel budgets, right? It's like, given that we've been having sales meetings for 8 weeks now online. A, does the customer want us to fly in and see them for a 1-hour demo? And B, do we really need to do that right now that we've been doing demos for 8 weeks now online? Do we necessarily have to be in person? So I think for big consultative sales, we'll still have some in-person interaction, but I do think that there are a lot of qualification will be done online now, more so than probably before.
Do you think that,
Um,
I'm just wondering, I'll put this out there for everybody. Do you think that this COVID and the changes that we're about to encounter here are going to accelerate or inhibit productivity for your business?
Inhibit what now?
Productivity in the
Oh,
business.
creativity.
Yeah. Or as Karen puts it, Karen and I were talking, she used the word efficiency. Okay. They want to make sure that everything is sort of without friction or as much as possible. Okay. You know, so which way is it going to, like you made a comment, you're saying, okay, so we're doing demos online. Okay. The other thing is we're doing consulting online. If I got any consulting or service piece to my business, we used to go out every week to the customer and sort of sit there at Citibank, right? You know, 5 days a week or 4 days a week. Now all of a sudden Citibank realizes, you know, we're paying, you know, tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to consultant travel budget expenses. You know, maybe there's some portion of that we can recover.
I think it could be enormously efficient and effective, right? I do wonder, however, from an educational standpoint, or even how to replicate the true brainstorming session, right? When you get 5, 6, 7, 8 people in a room and have a true brainstorming session. I'm not sure we have the tools necessarily to do that. Plus, there's so much that as a facilitator I can get out by seeing everybody in the room at once. It's sort of hard for me to really gauge body language on a Zoom chat. I guess I could get better at it, but I think I would at least initially be much more effective facilitating a brainstorming session in person. However, you know, 1-to-1 and, you know, 1-to-3, 1-to-5 discussions for people that I already know, I think could be much more efficient and effective. I think it was Steve that mentioned last week, you know, he lined up 8 meetings in a row, right, with 0 travel time between them.
That's Steve Paddock, who's a
yes,
pretty well-known angel investor here in town. Yeah, he said
and
he's
I find
more
the same
productive
thing,
now
right?
because he could just bang them out one after the other. Right?
I'm having way more meetings and pretty productive and no travel time, and probably able to balance, you know, home and work priorities almost completely fluidly. So I think it's both efficient and effective.
Yeah.
But I do wonder about the brainstorming sessions. Those are
I agree with that. I'll tell you, one of
difficult.
the experiences that I've had, and this sort of I'll put these in the brainstorming camp, is I started before all this COVID thing, I started doing Bible study online because I said, I wonder if I can create community like we do in person. And what I came to realize is that it's much more challenging to create that community aspect, okay, and to have those really transparent and deep conversations because you miss the body language. So I think that I've come to is that we're going to have to get people together like every 4 to 6 weeks and for an in-person time, even if it's not for that meeting, you know, that specific purpose, just as they could see each other and get to know the personalities a little bit better so that they're better online together, you know? So that's just something that I'm messing around with. Okay. But I think it's appropriate. Dave Davis, you've got a company that's not 116 people. Can you turn your speaker on for just a second? Yeah,
Yes,
can
sir.
you just tell what considerations you have? How many people do you have in your company?
We've got 20,
Yeah.
and we just a little quick background. We provide ERP software for small local governments,
Okay.
and we work in 8 different states across the country. So we were probably 50% work from home already before all this started. You would work from home 2 to 3 days, be in the office 2 to 3 days. So the transition to work from home went pretty smoothly for us.
And what about what's your vision sort of going forward for how the company will, first of all, of the other 50% of the people that aren't working from home regularly, that are now working from home, are
Well,
they,
everybody was working from home part-time. That's what I meant by 50%.
oh, that's what you meant. So you already
Yeah.
had this model in place in effect.
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
doing anything on site like Karen did, which is sort of, you know, making it safer, if you will, health-wise for the employees, as far as moving your desks further apart, or,
We definitely did some reorganization of the desks, but we haven't gone much further than that. Everybody is still 100% working from home. We're sitting here trying to figure out, do we really need this much office space? Even if we go forward, I don't believe we're going to get the in-person or working in the office as much of that as we had in the past. I think
let me
this is
ask you
just
another
this
question.
is the new normal.
Another question I have for you is that I know that you have people who actually go on site. So they actually travel to these government, right? To their
Yes.
locations. How are you handling that? I mean, it seems like this responsibility has now sort of fallen on you, if you will, to say, hey, Charlie, you need to get on a plane and you need to go to Kentucky, or you need to go to name the place, right?
Well, no, I mean, our customers don't want us there.
Okay.
I mean, they want the Zoom training to take place. If there's going to be any training take place, that's what they want. They said, we don't want a demo right now. We'll check back in a couple of months if we need to bring you on site for a demo.
Is anybody, okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Does anybody have travelers, if you will, that sort of, they're having to make the decision of send them or don't send them? Anybody have that challenge?
Yeah,
But would
Charlie,
Hey, Seth.
that's basically been our business. So I run Adventures and Missions, nonprofit, in addition to some other investments that I've got. But we went from 180 to about 50 people. And we, when COVID happened, we pulled 600 people off the field. And young people want to travel and they want adventure, but they also want purpose and they want mission. And that's what we have been in the business of giving them. And with all the countries of the world shut down, there is, we're out of business, just like an airline business would be out of business without passengers. So we're having to figure out, do we bring them like onto our campus just to train them, if that can happen? Or are we basically a company that is, unless we make a huge tectonic plate pivot, we're out of business? And so we're actually wondering whether not just put them on a plane. Can we put them on a plane? We're not talking about sales. We're talking about everything that we do, getting groups of young people on planes to go overseas. And we're wondering if we can reinvent ourselves or just shut the door.
Yeah, I talked to somebody. That's helpful. I talked to somebody because that's what you do. They got to go there, right? That's what you're about.
Right.
I was talking to another entrepreneur yesterday, and he said, this is a very serious. I'm being put into a position I never thought I would be in, and it's almost like life and death kind of decisions, right? So I'm sitting here, and if I need somebody to go and do that installation, because with our installations, they include hardware and everything needs to kind of come together, hardware, software, all that, can't do it remotely. He said, if I tell somebody they need to get on a plane and they agree to do it even, he said, and they get sick and they bring it home and a parent dies or something, he said, how will I ever live with myself? So here we are making those kinds of decisions as leaders that we never had before, ever. So this is a very, very challenging time to be in leadership, whether you're in government, as you see, or whether you're running a business like we are. So let me just, we're getting to the end of our time here. Does anybody want to make one last comment?
I do, Charlie. This is Yvonne.
Yes,
I want to say that a lot of my customers canceled the travel, but I've been doing the training via Zoom, And
Yeah.
they have started to like it. And they're like, wow, we could save money on travel. You can just do this via Zoom. And that's what I've been doing. And I also got the PPP money thanks to this group. I went ahead and applied, and I got my money. It's in the bank.
Did you get it from Montana?
Bank of America.
Oh, you did. Oh, good for you. Nobody can say no to you,
And
Yvonne.
thank you.
Nobody. Anyway, thank you folks for all coming, and to Karen and to John and to Nelson and all those who have jumped in. Thank you so much for sharing. I hope this was valuable to you. It was for me. This is a tough one to understand. I think what I'm pulling away from this, though, is that we do need to have a shared vision as a leadership team for what your business is going to look like going forward. And right now it's very murky, but over time, I think it'll be clearer and clearer. So one is just monitor your plan assumptions as you're putting these things together as it becomes clearer and clearer. Secondly, I would say is just be sure you're not creating friction for the customer. You have to still make it easy to do business with you, you know? And then lastly is communicate. You know, this is what Karen said, communicate, stay close, really close to your employees and to your customers. You have a stewardship responsibility here. We need to protect our employees, and we need to, because we're going to have to live with the decisions we make. You know, this is very, very serious stuff. And I always give you my weekly reminder for all early stage businesses: watch your cash. It goes out fast, it comes in slow. We won't get through this. You will get through this. Learn, decide fast, and move faster. My request to you, if you would, to help me, if you have an issue that you're facing and would like to know what other entrepreneurs are deciding, send it to me at charlie@paparelli.com. Help me get to topics that are important to you. If they're important to you, then you just need to know they're going to be important to everyone because they're leaders just like you. So come early. Next time, catch up with friends and meet some new people. We start 15 minutes early each week, but we do end on time. And I end with, no, I am praying for you. So thank you for all your attendance. Thanks for all your sharing. Thanks for being a community here in Atlanta that many other communities just don't have. You make it special. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
We'll see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.